Look, I have really strong views about certain things regarding what you just said, and you may hate it or like it, but I'm going to put it out there.
How familiar are you with Spain's topography and political geography?
This entire series, in my opinion, puts serious question marks on Indian batting lineup.
I don't understand why people compare Shubman Gill, Rohit Sharma, or anyone else in the current team with Virat Kohli.
This sort of discussion about the types of pitches has become like sort of a measuring, like certain body part measuring contest between different boards.
Name 4 cities in Spain, Khandalf.
Such a big legacy title isn't going to be dropped anywhere except in WrestleMania.
I will call both of them wrong, like both kinds of pitches, the Indian wickets and the wicket that we just saw in South Africa. These are really not good advertisements for the game of Test cricket.
The potential or the scope of home advantage has been unnecessarily stretched by the respective boards.
I mean, just like how you have all format players, they're not all conditions players.
Match between Awesome Truth and Dominic Mysterio and JD McDonald.
I think after Shikhar Dhawan, I don't think we have found a proper left-hander yet who's of international Test quality, and then slowly starts deteriorating. That's why Test cricket was always there. It starts deteriorating. The pitch needs to deteriorate.
Triple H usually does what's best for business.
The entire narrative should be more nuanced than this. This is no Leicester City making that improbable leap to the top of PL table.
Pakistan and misgovernance usually goes hand in hand and not just in cricket.
That's purely because of the kind of bounce that he generates due to his overspin and topspin. So that's something which is lacking in kind of sidearm spinners that we have in someone like Jadeja.
I disagree with you there because I think Australia and England, they have competitive matches on the kind of pitches that they have because the teams, their strengths are also similar.
I think we are seeing the rise of a new powerhouse of Spanish football.
Saudi did not invest in a nobody club and try to raise them. Arsenal fans are usually pissed off because they have set their expectations way too high.
Kevin De Bruyne starts warming up and the entire England shakes in fear.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Sports Entertainment Weekly. This is SU episode number 9, where we discuss with the usual suspects, Dave and BS and myself, Khandalf. We'll talk a lot about the happenings in cricket, WWE, and in football this week. We had a couple of nice test matches post the New Year's in cricket, both in the Southern Hemisphere, one in South Africa, where India are visiting, and the other Asian team visiting the Southern Hemisphere is Pakistan, down there in Australia, whitewashed, but much better whitewashed than the last time is what I would say. Dave, what do you feel? Let's start with the South Africa-India test match. Was it one-day international match which got stretched a bit?
Yeah, it's a bit of a almost bit of a joke considering how quickly the test match got over. Swinging pitches are fine, but then this was I think it set a record in terms of how short the test match was.
It is the shortest test match in terms of the number of overs bowled in recorded history, in probably 140-year-old history of the Test cricket. This is the shortest test match ever. Not a great advertisement for the game.
And it's a good thing that South Africa batted first because I think India got away with one. South Africa got all out in 55. I cannot imagine how India would have batted in that first day had India been put to bat in that session. Where
maybe 36 all out, you mean? India would have been 36 all if they had batted first. I can see a beaming smile on VS's face as well.
Comments?
No, but seriously, 55 all out was where they lost. South Africa lost the match, I think. Like, had they scored even 100 in the first innings or 150, I think they would have backed themselves and the bowlers to skittle out India considering the conditions. Because it's not like India batted really well. Okay, like in the first innings, we saw what happened, right? With just Kohli standing up and playing a good innings and rest of
and what a crucial innings that turned out to be in the end, and probably that was the difference between the two sides towards the end. Those runs which were added turned out to be the lead for India in a way, and that was hard to overcome for the South African batters after a point. So crucial innings, and I think the Class C player in Virat Kohli stands out time and again in such matches where the rest of the team falls apart and around him. That's where I may be biased towards Virat Kohli. I'm a big fan, but then I feel that such players, especially people like Virat Kohli, when everyone else fails, I don't understand why people compare Shubman Gill, Rohit Sharma, or anyone else in the current team with Virat Kohli. The only comparison with Virat Kohli is probably from different eras, probably with Sachin Tendulkar. We have a special episode on that. Do watch it, guys. It's in one of our playlists. So watch the comparison that VS makes, where he says that Virat Kohli has surpassed Sachin Tendulkar. So I think the only comparison possible is Sachin Tendulkar. And then again, I'm not a big fan of comparing people across eras. So
and
that's he made the difference between the two teams in a low-scoring thriller.
and
Yeah,
this
and
entire
again, Bharat,
series
I
he
don't
has done
think.
that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you are biased when you say that Kohli has stood tall amongst the dwarfs. It ultimately comes down to refinement, to technique. So Kohli is technically the most refined batsman that we have right now, and with that amount of pure technique and talent, sometimes the conditions, despite it being swinging and overcast at the same time, the batsman's pure technical abilities tends to show through, and that is what happened in Kohli's case. Because if anybody who watched the match, it was clear that he was amongst the compared to the peers and the South African batsmen, he was the one who looked most comfortable. And when I say most comfortable, again, it's a relative term because the pitch did not make any batsman of either team comfortable out there. But then among the 22 players who went out there, Kohli was the one who looked like, okay, he could bat on this pitch. And that again comes down to technique, because even in the years gone by, we have had such technicians, not just India, even other teams. So when the going gets tough, when the bowlers are yielding good results from the pitch and they are getting the swing, it has always been the technically refined batsmen who have been able to put up the scores and stand head and
Absolutely.
shoulders above the rest. So it does come
And
down to that. In a
and
sense,
the only
let's say
other
like
player.
Rahul Dravid, he was the one Indian batsman who used to have least problems when others were struggling, and that again ultimately comes down to batting technique and refinement. So it sounds a bit old school to say that the fine tuning is actually matters in modern day cricket, which is much more swashbuckling, but it does show through.
Uh, yeah, and the only thing I suppose, only other batsman who looked as comfortable as Kohli was Markram for South Africa, who scored a wonderful century when everyone else was falling apart around him. But this entire series, in my opinion, put serious question marks on Indian batting lineup. I am not at all convinced with this batting lineup. I think it has chinks. Certain players who have failed to deliver across the two tests, across the series. In fact, certain players whose place in the team, I don't understand how they are there. For example, I don't understand what Shreyas Iyer's role is in the current batting lineup. Has he made a single half century this series? I don't think he has. Has he? No, right?
I don't think
So,
so. Look, I
yeah.
mean, let's be
So,
fair to Shreyas Iyer also, or anybody else in this batting lineup.
yeah,
South Africa is a tough place to tour, and most of them are maybe, I don't know, maybe the second time they're going there, or some of them for probably the first time in South Africa.
yeah. I agree, but then all I'll say is that India got lucky in that second test. Like, say, had India not like put to bat first, we might have seen as a different result. Had South Africa scored 50 runs more in the first innings, we might have seen a different result. Considering how India capitulated in the first innings from somewhat 153 for 4 from 153 all out, it does not exactly fill you with confidence, right? Like when Indian batters are going out in overseas conditions.
VS, at this point, do you want to quote yourself and Ravi Shastri about going from 153 for 4 to 153 all out?
I went for a dump, and by the time I came back, the game was over.
That's exactly what we have said long, long ago in one of our episodes. And Shastri stole VS's lines, is the points that we're trying to make in this episode right now. So, but I think, very good points there about the lineup. It seems to be a batting lineup where they're unsure of their roles. Unlike the one day international India batting lineup, where at least, I mean, you might actually flog them for losing the World Cup finals, but we are being harsh as Indian cricket fans usually are. But otherwise, it's a very good
Talking
one
about
day
the
matchup.
lineup, Khandalf, I just wanted to ask you about what do you think of Yashasvi Jaiswal's role as India's test opener? Extremely talented young batsman, very explosive, who came through, who earned his name playing T20 in the Indian Premier League. He also has a test century to his name already. So I'm not saying he doesn't merit inclusion in Indian test team, but putting him such a young player as an opener in a place like South Africa, what do you make of it?
I think, see, they're definitely taking a gamble with this decision to put Yashasvi Jaiswal out there. It's a gamble. They must have definitely seen something in him, which has convinced them that he is test quality player. Maybe his strokes,
Do you
maybe
think
his
his preferred hand being left matters or
yeah.
might have influenced the decision? Because we do not have a dearth of openers, and there are others who might be in the same conversation that Yashasvi Jaiswal is in right now, but he made the cut. And considering India's recent lack of depth that thereof of left-handed batsmen, do you think that might have played in the selector's mind in picking him over the
Yeah,
others?
absolutely. I think so too. Because I think after Shikhar Dhawan, I don't think we have found a proper left-hander yet who is of international test quality. Or even Shikhar Dhawan, I'm not sure. I mean, he has played a lot of match-winning innings in the limited overs, in limited overs cricket, but I don't remember him having a really long test career. But he was good for what it's worth. So, but after that, I think we have not had many left-right opening partnerships, and I think that's what they're trying to make. Once Rohit Sharma inevitably retires, they would probably put in Shubman Gill up there. Shubman Gill again doesn't know his role right now. He's somewhere, just fitting in into the 11 just because he has to fit in. But otherwise, I think the long-term plan is to probably open with someone like Shubman Gill and Yashasvi Jaiswal, and then number three would be a different player. Once Kohli retires, you might have someone else come in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long time
Yeah, I think
before
it's
a
a
retirement happens to Kohli. So
yeah.
the selectors
I think
certainly
it's
does have time
a
to work on.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's
Deva.
a fight between Ruturaj Gaikwad and Yashasvi Jaiswal for that second opener spot after Rohit Sharma retires, because the first opener spot, like Khandal said, is going to Shubman Gill. It's very clear. As far as Yashasvi Jaiswal's inclusion in this particular test series, I think it's trial by fire almost. Like, this is a kid who has had a couple of really good seasons in IPL. Credits to Rajasthan Royals for keeping faith in him. He had a great under 19 World Cup. Uh, Tests. If I were a selector, I would have put him first in like 2, 3 test series as an Indian. Like, give him one Indian summer to settle in. Let him get like some runs in under his belt, then send him out to difficult conditions in England or South Africa. But hopefully his confidence is not shot. He looks like a very confident young man, so I think
Yeah.
he won't have any issues. But I personally did not like this inclusion simply because I think he's too inexperienced for these sort of challenging conditions. I would have put him in two,
Absolutely.
three test matches in India and in Indian subcontinent. Let him have a couple of centuries in playing against Sri Lanka. That is a
Yeah,
better side.
you can always try a young, inexperienced debutant bowler in foreign conditions, which could be a
Yeah,
different one. But to
Yeah.
try a young batter in extremely different, difficult conditions, that's a huge gamble, and very few
especially
people
opener.
actually do well.
Yeah,
Another
especially
thing,
openers.
Yeah,
absolutely, yes. And talking about the lineup, Khandalf, another thing that stood out to me was India's paper thin middle or lower middle order batting lineup, thinner than your average 45-year-old Indian uncle. So, what do you make of it? Do you think Ravindra Jadeja, being India's all rounder, spinner plus middle order batsman, gives India enough assurances in test under such challenging conditions? And also bringing into the point, so Ravisandan Ashwin is still out there, he hasn't retired. Do you think he would have a chance to make a comeback, not just as a spinner, because in conditions like South Africa, they do not need two spinners, but as a somewhat of a reliable batsman who can put that extra 20, 30 runs on the board that would matter so much in matches like this?
Look, I have really strong views about certain things regarding what you just said, and you may hate it or like it, but I'm going to put it out there. Um, Look, you may actually call this pitch and be, slamming the hypocrisy that generally English, Australian, and other media that they portray Indian pitches as when the test match pitches in India turn square from day one. They start spinning. Ashwin comes in by the third over or the fourth over, and Jadeja and Ashwin bowl the rest of the test match. So I think what we need to understand is that our Indian test team is not going to cut it across all grounds across the world. It is tailor made for India, and you will have these folks who I personally feel might click once or twice here or there in West Indies or somewhere in England, in maybe in a test match where conditions suit them. But they are not really, I mean, just like how you have all format players, they're not all conditions players, especially someone like Ashwin or a Jadeja. They are so used to steamrolling across teams who come to India, um, are not able to really forget thriving. They're not able to really survive on these kind of wickets. Especially people like Jadeja or Ashwin, even with the ball, is not too threatening. As compared
Yeah.
to someone like, say, the usual comparisons that people make with Ashwin, right? Someone like Nathan Lyon, he's been really good across conditions. And to be a spinner in Australia itself is a huge challenge where the wickets are usually bouncy and the pitches start to turn only on day 3 or day 4 and 5. And even on some of the tracks like Perth is known to be a fast wicket traditionally, whether it was the Waka ground earlier or the current Optus Stadium in Perth. But Nathan Lyon has a very good track record in Perth. That's purely because of the kind of bounce that he generates due to his overspin and topspin. So that's something which is lacking in kind of sidearm spinners that we have in someone like Jadeja, who may not extract that kind of bounce from the pitch as much as a high arm action, someone like a Nathan Lyon or a Graham Swan. So I think that's probably something which is missing. They need to identify people or make pitches which deteriorate over a period of time. And I will call both of them wrong, like both kinds of pitches, the Indian wickets and the wicket that we just saw in South Africa. These are really not good advertisements for the game of Test cricket. I mean, whether you give me a test match in Bombay, which finishes off in like 2 days, or whether you give me something in Cape Town, which finishes off in 1.5 or lesser, I'm going to call both of them poor equally. I'm not going to say, Joe, just because it was a seaming wicket, it was a great wicket. It's still a bad wicket. It shouldn't be that way. The best wickets are the ones where you have something on offer for everyone. It starts seaming on days 1 and 2, and then slowly starts deteriorating. That's why Test cricket was always there. It starts deteriorating. The pitch needs to deteriorate. It needs to really help the batsman a bit on day 1 and 2. The ideal test conditions is where the ball starts swinging and seaming initially, and that's why you need really good opening batters traditionally to see off the new ball. The term "seeing off
Yeah.
the new ball" comes because you need to just wait it out, play it out, not become like 5 runs for 2 wickets. Instead, you just play it out slowly and steadily at a run rate of around 3 or 3.5, and then after number 3 comes, the ball gets slightly older, and then you start to push the run. And then by the time day 2 or day 3 comes, then the spinner starts to come. The old ball starts to behave. And that's how test match needs to progress. So I think unless you have pitches in India which behave that way, we may not
Yeah.
have teams that actually adapt to those conditions.
Khandalf, I
That was
feel
very well
like
said, Khandalf.
this.
Yeah, moving on.
Yeah,
David, it's up to you.
Gandalf, I feel like this sort of discussion about the types of pitches has become like sort of a measuring, like certain body part measuring contest between different boards, because it feels like, oh, BCCI goes, oh, you
Yeah,
can make seaming conditions, we'll make spinning condition from day one. And then South Africa board goes, oh, you think you can only make conditions suitable to your area, we'll make seaming tracks from day one and we'll finish the test match within 2 days. It's sort of a becomes a very toxic cycle where every time
absolutely.
you go abroad or any team comes to India, at least once they will make this sort of pitch where the test match will get over within 2 days, whether it
Yeah, it's
is
become
England taking the pitch.
sort of a board administrators' ego battles, or even
Yeah,
sometimes the captain and the players as well vouch
yeah,
for it.
and
They push the
and you can hear it.
groundsmen.
Yeah, sorry, continue, Khandal.
No, no. I'm saying that the captain and the coaches also push the groundsmen and others to do their thing. And I remember watching this test match in Australia. On TV, of course. It was a day-nighter GABA test, if I'm not wrong. And that match finished off in like 2 days or a little more, 2.5 or something. Ping pong test, and that was as bad as it was, but it was entertaining, no doubt. But it just got over without anyone scoring much. And same with an MCG pitch. If you remember Boxing Day match
Yeah.
a few years back versus India or something, it was a flat track. You could bat for 7 days without losing a wicket on that track.
Yeah.
And
And you have and you can hear that sort of administratorial high-handedness attitude even during commentary. If you have come across that sentence which I think Sunil Gavaskar said in Hindi commentary during this test match with regards to this pitch, saying that, oh, if there was no BCCI, you wouldn't be selling your tickets for even 5 rupees. That sort of, those sort of comments like seep into the commentators as well, and that uh, shows the instructions which are being given, I feel like, from BCCI and all ki, unki, we have to show them their aukat as well, like, oh fine, we won in your pitch which you had tailored to your conditions, so our commentators are going to shove it in deep and like rub the salt in your wound. That sort of a thing is, I think it's just toxic for
yeah, it's not going
cricket.
to take cricket anywhere. I've seen even the recent test matches in India over the last few years, audiences in the stadiums dwindling every year. And if anyone saw the current test matches in Australia, Boxing Day numbers are not the numbers that it used to be. Of course, you
Hmm.
don't expect Boxing Day stadium numbers at the MCG to be the same level as England versus Australia match at the MCG. Australia Pakistan would obviously have lesser crowd, but then it was almost empty stands in many of the places that you saw around on Boxing Day. So that was slightly
I think the
disappointing.
only silver lining for Test cricket over the past couple of years that we've seen has been Ashes, and that has kept up the heritage of Test cricket, I would say, to a certain extent in the modern day. Both the teams going at each other. But
Yeah.
like Dev and Khandalf rightly said, the Test cricket home advantage has been the potential or the scope of home advantage has been unnecessarily stretched by the respective boards to make the game overall less appealing to the audience. So
Yeah, absolutely.
on
I
that
mean,
note,
it's almost a no-brainer these days that a home team is obviously going to win unless you make a competitive pitch out of it, and
Yeah.
where others are able to do something and try at least. And I feel that the teams that have done a bit in that regard are probably Australia and England. Australian and English pitches, visiting teams. I'm comparing it to the
But
rest of the world.
Alex, I would
Visiting
slightly
teams,
disagree with you there because I think Australia and England they have competitive matches on the kind of pitches that they have because the teams their strengths are also similar. So
yeah.
the strengths of bowling in England and Australia they are kind of similar. So when England makes a pitch that caters to their interest, they are also indirectly helping Australia's or catering to Australia's strengths as well, and that
Yeah,
makes
you make
the
a pitch. Yeah,
competition
you make a
anything.
pitch. You're very absolutely right. You make a pitch for James Anderson and Stuart Broad, and you end up losing the toss. You'll
You
probably
are also
have
making it
Daisy
for
Wood and
Mitchell
Cummins
Stark
come in
and
and
Hazelwood.
take 5, 6 wickets. So it's
Yeah.
going to
Yes,
backfire.
exactly. But then
I
when
suppose
teams
ideally
that also comes
speaking.
down again, Khandalf, to the point that you said because a lot of teams they're having specialists for special conditions. They're not having players who are going to go out there and perform. And like the way that Indian team is tailored, everybody knows that you cannot make a pitch against that spins against the Indian team. So they go completely against it. But I think Test cricket can be optimized if all the teams start developing in the same areas
Yeah,
where the
absolutely.
Aussies
That's
and
the only way
England
to get
they have these.
competitive. And I
Yeah,
think during the call, it's also a realization that I have now, like VS you mentioned, that the reason why Ashes is found entertaining in the last few years, or probably the only series which is entertaining so far throughout the last many years, is because these teams have similar strengths and probably similar weaknesses. They are
weaknesses as well.
neck to neck in terms of their qualities, their strengths, and even if one team is weaker, you'll obviously find the other team stronger in something else, but their composition in terms of the whole team composition would
Yes.
almost be the same. And it has been that way for the longest time. Even in those mid 90s or the late 90s, where England used to be the weaker side as compared to Australia, it was still competitive. That's because you have something else making up for it in the English team.
Yep.
So, yeah,
And
good
on a
points there
positive
about
note, Khandal,
Khandal's.
I also do think that other teams are slowly inching towards this optimal level of composition for teams in Test cricket because the performance that Mohammad Siraj did in South Africa gives India a lot of optimism. So if at
Yeah.
all a team like Australia, England, or South Africa were to invite Indian team on a pitch that caters to James Anderson, they would also be catering to Mohammad Shami and Siraj at the
Exactly.
same time.
And Siraj
So
and
once
Bumrah.
those teams,
The
yeah, and Bumrah. So, and once those teams starts developing
Oh,
their own quality spinners, because they would also have to inevitably come to Indian subcontinent at some point
yeah.
and
We
face
absolutely
India here,
forgot
they
yeah,
to
would
talk
be
about
yeah.
developing their spinners. So once India have
yeah.
developed their pacers,
We absolutely
Just
forgot to talk about the Indian pacers, especially Bumrah and Siraj. I think they are all format, all condition spaces that
Yeah, yeah,
India
yeah.
has. And
India needs a, like
Yeah.
you mentioned, Khandalf, India needs that all format spinner, which I don't think has been there in Indian cricket since all. I think Harbhajan Singh was the last one. I think because of
yeah,
his high arm action, he produced a lot of bounce, so he could bowl in Australian conditions really well
exactly.
as well.
Same with Kumble.
And in
Yeah,
English
Kumble also had a
conditions,
very bouncy
same with
action.
Kumble.
Yeah.
Same with Kumble, and India lacks that all format, all conditions spinner. Currently we have like veterans
I
of the
think
caliber of yeah,
David,
veterans like
I'm really
Ashwin and
sorry,
all.
but I think you are being extremely ambitious to hope for somebody of the caliber of Anil Kumble to pop out so that India starts having an all. I mean, Kumble is an outlier. You don't
We
get
need
players like that every 20 years. He's intergenerational, so you cannot expect an Anil Kumble to be churned out by India overnight. That
yeah,
team gets balanced. It's simply unfair. You
yeah,
have to
but
make do with what you've been given.
Okay.
this Indian lineup does need that sort of spinner which Khandalf talked about,
Khandalf
like
had to say something.
all.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
was trying to just move the conversation slightly off to the other side of the southern hemisphere, maybe across the Indian Ocean
Yes.
to Australia, where we have seen similar players. Like we spoke of Yashasvi Jaiswal and his, baptism by fire in South Africa, opening the batting for India. Uh, is it something which has been inspiration for teams ever since David Warner made his Test debut? Being a T20 specialist, he was inducted into the test team without even making his first class debut. And I think what a career it has been. There is a special episode that Chris and I have on David Warner. Do watch out, guys. So, yes, Dave, is it something a similar story that they're trying to build with someone like Yashasvi Jaiswal or any other
Uh,
2020 player?
Khandalf, again, I have a very strong opinion on this, and it comes back to the point that you mentioned earlier, where seeing out the new ball is no longer the trend because the whole day plays out like a new ball. So back in the, I mean, if at all in the days of Test cricket that you mentioned, it would not be ideal to have somebody like SSV Jaiswal. Warner, you can because he's a much more refined batsman. And to be fair to SSV, he also has way more experience under his belt. SSV might eventually get there. But the reason why we are trying or teams are trying openers who are young, who has a potential to be explosive at the top of the innings, is probably again because the whole factor of new ball no longer exists. So sometimes even in Test cricket, putting quick runs on the boards to put the opposition under pressure, because if you smoke some five boundaries, it's already 20 runs, and in low scoring affairs as the ones that we've recently had, that sometimes makes a difference. And also when the batsman is explosive, it is also a defensive strategy in a way, in the sense that when a dangerous bowler is swinging the ball, by playing an explosive batsman, you are exposing him to lesser number of balls. So somebody who puts quick runs on the ball also have to face a low number of deliveries. So in a way, that's a defensive tactic, and I think it's been bought into Test cricket because of what you mentioned earlier, the pitches being extremely one-dimensional, and it's the same way. So for David Warner was more than just that. He was a game changer, somebody who could do his thing in all formats of the cricket. And
Yeah.
let's not. I'm very sure you did not mean that, but then again, David Warner is not as one-dimensional that he can only perform in 2020. He had all the weapons in his arsenal to,
Yeah, I think
and a wide
like
range.
you rightly said, they probably saw a lot of other strokes and quality in David Warner early on that was
Yeah.
required for Test cricket, and he proved them right. Like it's not a joke to actually slam a triple century in Test cricket, regardless of your away record. I know people criticize David Warner for his away record, especially batting in England and in India, but there are certain Test matches which probably might not show up on the statistics right now, where he has really played well against the spin in India, in Bangladesh, and sometimes even in a couple of test matches in England he very really played well. Of course, now what we know of him in England is how he is Stuart Broad's bunny, but otherwise what a fantastic career he's had, and what a really fantastic series against Pakistan. We are talking about that, and I think
I would
this
like
was
to
a
give a
Pakistan
shout
team
out
which, sorry.
to certain. I'm sorry for interrupting you, Khandal, but I would like to give a shout out to a certain Pakistani player, Amir Jamal. In the first innings of Pakistan in the third Test match, which just concluded, the man came in at number 8, scored 82 out of 87 balls. Okay. Uh, to a level where Australia had like four fielders on boundary at one point of time, just protecting the boundary. He was hitting the ball so hard and so well. And I think the commentator Harsha Bhogle said that if I were Amir Jamal, I would take this screenshot and frame it up, because this shows that the mighty Australian side is so scared of me that they have put four or five fielders on the boundary line.
Yeah,
He
look, they
was
were
that
trying to follow
disrespectful.
the same tactics that they were using in the Ashes in the third test or something, where both England and Australia were trying short balls throughout the entire day, and that was boring to the spectators. But they were trying it for Amir Jamal as well, and I don't know if he's
And
Imran Khan, but he's definitely moved up the pecking order for Pakistan, much ahead of
yeah, I
someone
think
like Haris Rauf. I don't think Haris Rauf is coming into the test team as long as Amir Jamal is going to be there.
yeah, and
He's
the guy came back and like took six wickets while bowling as well. So had he not scored that 82 runs and not taken six wickets, this would have been an even easier cakewalk for Australia. So shout
absolutely.
out to Ahmed Jamal. Excellent,
Yeah,
excellent
look,
innings. Very
you know,
entertaining.
it's more than what the scoreline suggests. It's not a 3-0 whitewash like it was earlier last time for Pakistan in Australia. Ian Chappell called it to be the worst team to have ever hit Australian shores when Pakistan toured Australia last time. Like Ian Chappell always does. He's very caustic in his comments and criticism. But this time around, I would say that Pakistan really competed well. Like all the pundits called out, the crucial moments, the 50-50 moments, is where Pakistan lost the game. They missed those half chances. There were a lot of easy regulation catches in the slip cordon and otherwise that they missed. They didn't convert their starts. Babar Azam, their best batter, actually did not make a huge score in any of the matches that he's played. And in series like this, you expect someone like Babar Azam or a key batter to actually stand up and put those big hundreds. And sorry for once again bringing the conversation to David Warner, but in this entire series, he was the only centurion. We didn't have a Steve Smith. We didn't have Mitch Marsh. Of course, did a couple of 90s, I think. He deserved a century for sure, and he's had a good series. But from Pakistan's side, there is a lot of praise for the current captain Shan Masood conducting himself pretty well on the field and off it, and also being very level-headed, balanced, and in terms of tactics, very good as well. But I really want him to lead from the front. I mean, if you're not batting and if you're already averaging in your early 30s as a captain of a cricket team, and you don't have a huge first class batting average to boast of either, then you better buckle up and then, lead by example is probably what I would say of Shan Masood. I mean, he's a good guy. He's definitely, I mean, if you want nice guys to be the captain, then probably he is. But the point is that he needs to make runs. Someone has to stand up to win a series or win a test match, even in a country like Australia.
Yeah, I think it's a testament to the sort of confused team dynamics which Pakistan has and has had for some time now. You have a guy like Masood at 34 years of age becoming the captain of the test side, which is a fine thing. But was he the best guy to be leading? I do not know. I'm not well versed in Pakistani cricket politics, which is going on, and there's a lot of politics going on there. But I would say that why not someone like Rizwan, who is your key batsman across formats and the only batsman of caliber who actually performed in this Test series for Pakistan, I would say. Why not Rizwan? Why not just give the captainship to one of the bowlers, Shaheen Shah Afridi or something across format? But
Yeah. And
yeah,
if you look at that, they made a foolish decision of keeping Rizwan out in the first test match and having Sarfraz in. And the other foolish decision was to keep Shaheen Shah Afridi out of a test match when he was your performer in the first test match and the second one also, I think. So I
yeah.
think it was really surprising, baffling moves by Pakistan. I think they were just trying to confuse Australia into what they were thinking. But
I don't think they were trying to confuse Australia. I think they were confused themselves.
Exactly. I don't think why either of you are surprised because Pakistan and misgovernance it usually goes hand in hand and not just in cricket. So it's expected, but at the very least they are progressing. They are on the right route, and they have a few potential players to look forward to. And we're pretty sure things are getting greener on the green part of the subcontinent. So I think that's what we had to cover in cricket. Now moving on to your favorite performance drama, which you also call a sport. What's cooking in WWE?
All right. Dave, what do we have in WWE apart from
Oh
The
God.
Rock saying things that he usually says?
No, I think
Rock
the
being rock.
headlines were sort of, yeah, headlines were sort of stolen by that one segment. We have a few takes on specifically on that one segment. That's how big of a news that made. The ripples were heard across the pro wrestling world, and there were speculations about what that means, it means for WrestleMania. Will Rock face Roman Reigns in the Elimination Chamber, etc., etc., etc. That's still up in the air, more or less. But what we do know after last Friday's SmackDown, is that for Roman Reigns' immediate future, he's facing uh, he's facing three other men in a fatal four-way match at Royal Rumble. The participants are going to be AJ Styles, Randy Orton, and LA Knight. So Khandalf, were you surprised that it's a fatal four-way? Because I think a lot of guesses going into last Friday's SmackDown was that it's just going to be Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns in Royal Rumble at Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I think, before we get into that, before I answer that, I just want to quickly tell the audience that we have a special with The Rock addressing Roman Reigns directly and calling Roman Reigns out. Please do watch that episode with Dave VS and Chris, debating on that. Yeah, coming back to answering your question, Dave, on the fatal four way. I think they are trying to grab as many eyeballs as possible with putting everyone into the mix. They know that LA Knight works. They know that AJ Styles works. They know that Randy Orton just came back, so he also works. So why not put all the biggest, trump cards all into the ring at once and see what happens? So I think Royal Rumble in itself is a confused stage. I love the Royal Rumble. It's fun. You have suspense with the countdowns. You have people coming in, and you have comebacks and returns. And the
Yeah.
entrance pops that happen during such returns are always memorable. But it's also a confused, chaotic place, the ring. And that's what they probably are trying to make it with the main event as well, a confused, chaotic place with Roman
Yeah.
Reigns thrown in. You'll probably see, two or three finishers happen at the same time. I won't be surprised if there is a spear across and then there is someone trying to, jump from the top rope and then RKO out of nowhere happening all at the same
Yeah.
time. I can guarantee you that right now, even before these things happen.
Yeah, it's sort of their instead of going for a traditional Randy Orton versus Roman Reigns match, I think they just went for a car crash. They were like, okay, we are going to put one of the best workers in the planet in AJ Styles along with these three elements to tie in a match together and have. See, I don't think any of us are in any delusion that Reigns is dropping the title at Royal Rumble. I don't think such a
It's not happening.
big
Yeah.
such a big legacy title isn't going to be dropped anywhere except in WrestleMania. That's a WrestleMania moment waiting to happen, and it will hopefully happen with Cody. But that is not happening. So they are like, okay, we promise you a car crash. There you go. It's just four men beating the crap out of each other. Apart from that, WWE was pretty. Made some interesting choices. We had the finals of the US title tournament in KO versus Santos Escobar, which KO won. And so
Yeah.
we have KO versus Logan Paul at WrestleMania. Khandalf, who do you think is winning?
I think it's going to be Logan Paul. I'm just thinking that WWE might finally do this. It's a gamble, I know, to put someone like KO behind the stage for a bit, but I think this is Logan Paul's moment, just like how it was LA Knight's moment, like a couple of months back before Crown Jewel. And I also, I mean, while I speak about Logan Paul, we should address the other megastar in this, who is LA Knight. I really hope that this year turns out good for LA Knight and where he becomes champion. I don't know if they can do it with the current storyline or how it's going around with this, the whole thing. But I'm really hoping they don't really mess with what could be a good career for LA Knight and for WWE as well. I mean, it's going to be huge if they can capitalize on his popularity. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to do with Logan Paul as well. So, WrestleMania, Logan Paul, social media megastar. It's going to be huge if he actually puts down KO. And I
Even
think
as
it's
a
building
casual
up to
fan,
that.
Khandalf, I think your wishes will come true because you once said yourself, and as you quoted, Triple H usually does what's best for business.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Uh, just a couple of other things before we move on to other things. We are getting this is something I have liked in the past couple of Raws and Smackdowns. A lot of programming isn't just focused on titles. There are non-title feuds coming up in interesting places in tag division, for example. I think last to last Friday there was this Miracle on 34th Street fight or something like that between
Yeah, it was a
Damage
holiday
Control
special.
and
Yeah.
Damage Control and Bianca and her group of baby faces. And out of nowhere, Isla Dawn and Alba Fair came in and hit their finishers on the Kabuki warriors who are Kairi Sane and Asuka. That's a non-title tag feud which is being set up, and that fight will happen, I think, in the next Friday. This Friday we got AOP making their return after almost 5 years out of WWE, aligning themselves with Karrion Cross and with their manager Paul Ellering. Just some context about who Paul Ellering is. He is the person who was managing Road Warriors in the 1980s and 90s. Legendary WWE manager. He was their manager in the during their NXT run, and he goes really well. Like this old wily mastermind, helping two big horses fight their way through. They had some really fun matches in NXT. I don't think they translated that well to main roster when they made their jump to main roster after their NXT run, and they got released. Thankfully, they're back, and they're back with their manager. And they immediately attacked Bobby Lashley and Street Profits. So that's a non-title tag feud again. A three-man feud or even just a straight-up tag feud between Authors of Pain and AOP, which is something which fills me with joy, I would say.
Yeah, no,
Non-title tag
absolutely. I
feud.
think you're so right that these non-title feuds is probably very underrated and less spoken of, but it is something which is so critical to keep the show going. And with just passing titles or titles being defended, it's going to get stale at some point. And these are what probably are less spoken about, but this is what probably keeps the whole entertainment business of the professional wrestling world going. And yeah, well, I mean, that's a good
Especially,
couple of updates and a good storyline building up there. I saw Karen Cross, the
especially
amount of
because,
power,
sorry, continue.
yeah, amount of
Hmm.
power that he has, and he was just manhandling and mishandling and manhandling Bobby Lashley, who himself is like almost what equivalent
He's
to
huge.
Brock Lesnar size. Yeah, he's
Yeah, he is absolutely huge. And Karrion Cross it's very clear that they're high on Karrion Cross, even though he has had a few missteps in his main roster run already. They're clearly high on Karrion Cross, which is good to see. I think he has potential as this monster heel.
absolutely, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Apart from that, if there is one particular match I would personally like to give a shout out to in the 2 hours or like multiple hours of WWE programming, which I inevitably ended up seeing through no happiness to my supervisor. But anyway, the one match for which I would like to give a shout out to was the opener of Raw. If anyone has seen, Khandalf, did you see the opener of Raw? The match between Awesome Truth and Dominic Mysterio and JD McDonagh.
Oh, I really wanted to watch that, but I actually skipped a little ahead and watched the other ones. But
Please
I
do,
saw that being promoted on YouTube as well, so I will definitely go and watch it. Awesome Truth. I think
please
it's
do.
Miz and R Truth, right? So
Yes, please do, and I will tell you why. If there was a category of the best comedy match this year, I think it has already won it. That's how funny
I
that
love
match
the
was
Miz, man.
because
I love the Miz.
man, our truth, oh my god, he is having a career resurgence at 37 or 38 years old.
Wow.
I'm not
I'm
kidding.
so
His
happy for
infusion,
Arthur. I remember watching this video which went viral about I think the PG rated era or the PG era or sometime before that, the ruthless aggression era or somewhere where R Tooth
hmm,
just casually walks around the ring goes to a fan who's smoking a cigar or a cigarette, just grabs it and then smokes a couple and then walks back into the ring or something like that.
So
And
uh,
he's a character. He's a certain
he's
character, and I'm not
his
surprised he's making
comedic
it big
timing
again.
is his comedic timing is impeccable, absolutely impeccable. Because this entire match was set up because R-Truth in his mind is a part of Judgment Day, because he defeated JD McDonough the other night, where loser it was the stipulation was loser leaves Judgment Day. So even during the tags, right, he was tagging with Miz, and he would go and tag Dominic Mysterio because he is a part of Judgment. I am failing to explain the match really well enough,
Yeah,
but it is one of
I'll
the best
definitely.
comedy
I'm
matches
already
I've
being
seen.
drawn to watching this match. I really like the comic elements that WWE brings with certain wrestlers, and
And I
I mean,
think
I miss that
just
these
the
days. It used to be a lot with Eddie Guerrero and folks like that, but I'm looking
exactly.
forward to seeing that. And even with
Yeah,
New Day, to an extent, they pulled off that comic thing for a long time. But I don't know where the New Day is right now, so I will definitely go back and
most of
watch
them
this
are
match.
injured. But this match was excellent, and credits to Triple H for introducing R-Truth into Judgment Day. He's giving that group even more personality than it already had. So a really fun segment, and I really enjoyed Raw simply because it had that match in it.
So I think that's brings us to an end of Khandal's favorite segment, as we can visibly see by the big wide grin on his face. And now we move on to Khandal's least favorite segment. Talking about football, Khandalf, it's 2024. Khandalf, I'll just ask you a question. How familiar are you with Spain's topography and political geography?
Not too much, but I mean, geography, yes, not the political geography, but
Okay, so
yeah.
name four cities in Spain, Khandalf. Four.
That would be Madrid,
Fine, fair
Barcelona,
enough. Cool.
and probably I don't know. Valencia, is it a cricket? Sorry, is it a
Valencia,
football
that's
team?
spot on.
Okay,
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
football team. Okay, then I would go with one more. Sevilla.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And in 2024, Khandalf, it's already the season is almost halfway over, and you have almost named like the conventional powerhouse clubs in Spain, and none of these clubs are at the top of the table. They've in 2024, halfway after the season. Did you ever expect FC Girona to be leading La Liga? Because that is what is happening.
This small Catalan club, tiny Catalan club. Now, yeah, now I know the dominant narrative with regards to Girona, in the sense ki Girona is this tiny club going up against the Rapids, and like through their manager and their player good scouting have reached the pinnacle of La Liga so far in this season. And I'm not taking away anything from their players or their manager. Michel is a great manager, I think, better than most people give him credit for. They have done good scouting, but I think the entire narrative should be more nuanced than this. This is no Leicester City making that improbable leap to the top
Yes.
of PL table. This is a city-owned group.
This
This is
is
a city-owned
exactly.
city group
It
owned
is a
club,
club owned by
which is
City. It is
yeah.
extremely well scouted, and incidentally, the person in charge of the board for FC Girona is a Guardiola.
Yeah, it's
He's like Guardiola live.
Guardiola.
It's Pere
No,
Guardiola.
he is literally the brother of Pep Guardiola,
Pep
Guardiola.
Guardiola. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not like
And the match
this
that
sort
they
of
had last
fairy
week,
tale.
they beat Atletico Madrid 4-3 in injury time.
Yeah,
And Atletico Madrid are no pushovers. And to make that resounding victory, to go to the top of the table ahead of the likes of the traditional giants, Barcelona and Real Madrid, Girona, they look like they are here to stay because the squad, it's extremely functional. They do not have superstars, but almost all their players are top level players. They don't have a significant weakness in the squad, in the sense that they are able to play possession football where required. At the same time, they do not mind putting a ball over the top to the striker to hold it up and pass it on to an on-rushing winger. And they have made themselves really flexible. One thing I think that has been working for them so far, which might not eventually work for them, because is that when La Liga teams who are lower mid table or kind of towards the relegation zone, when they face teams like Real Madrid, or Barcelona, or an Atletico Madrid, they tend to withhold to a shell. They try to put up a low block, because the primary concern when facing Barcelona and Real Madrid is to not get battered. Mentally,
Yeah.
most of these teams have at certain levels accepted a loss, and they are trying to limit the damage to keep the goal difference at a minimum, which I think is something that Girona has been enjoying, because even now, till now, teams are not treating FC Girona like they treat a Barcelona. The games are much more open. Teams think that they can take a point off them, because they are not Barcelona or Real Madrid, and that opens up the game a bit. And Girona has exploited it massively. It is high time already that La Liga teams take note of what Girona has done. They are there because they belong there, and take them seriously enough, and stop giving them this advantage that the other traditional powerhouses are not getting, because
Is
there is
this
every chance that
is this
Girona
is
might
this
even be
turning
able
out
to copy them.
is is this turning out to be something like Leicester City situation back then? I remember Jamie Vardy, Riyad Mahrez, and
Exactly. That's what
See,
Dave
I will.
addressed, Khandalf. I'll leave it to him.
Yeah, so I will explain this. So Leicester City had a really good season, then they dropped off. Right. I don't think we'll see the same with Girona. I think we are seeing the rise of a new powerhouse of
Yes.
Spanish football, simply because, see, when you are owned by the City Group, you get privileges. You get privileges of the City Group. For example, even if they sell, say, a few players, first of all, they do not need to sell any player, since they're owned by City Group. They are not going. Their squad is not going to get butchered like Leicester City squad was
They do
butchered.
not need
Where
the money
Mahrez,
from sales
they do not
necessarily.
they do not need money from sales. First, second, they will get perks of being owned by City. For example, uh, City just recently signed, or they're about to sign, this really highly rated Argentinian baller of a winger, Claudio Echeverri, for 20 million. What they're going to do is they're going to send him on loan for 2 seasons to Girona. So Girona's squad isn't going to get weaker. They are going to get wonder kids from South America, and they will loan them to Girona, and they will play for Girona. So they are going to become stronger, probably even stronger than cash-strapped Barca and most other La Liga clubs, because they will just get City players on loan, and they will
and
play
and,
them,
and
and they are going
City
to be good.
and City in turn is owned by oil people, right? So
Yeah.
Exactly.
they don't have any
It's
shortage
not
of funds.
exactly. Absolutely, because it's the same group, it's the same fund that owns these clubs, and it's not just Manchester City and Girona. They also own Mumbai City. They also own clubs in Serie A, and obviously the priority club is Manchester City, because that the fact that they play in English Premier League, and that is the top priority club. But Girona are kind of pushing themselves, and we might even, I dare say it, we might even, it's very far fetched, but we might even see a day where FC Girona is placed by the City Group on the same priority as Manchester City, because the achievements cannot be taken away. They are in a league competing against two of the very best clubs in the world, and they're giving them a run for their money, despite being the second priority. And the investments that has gone to Girona pales in comparison to what has happened at Manchester City. So the sheikhs might actually start to think, okay, now Girona, like they planted a lot of saplings, and Man City obviously blossomed and has been bearing fruits for many years now. But they are also seeing that FC Girona, they are no longer in the shade of a lot of other clubs. They are again
No.
very well blossoming output for their investment, and there is every chance that they might continue to invest in them. And also, Kandal,
See,
what happened at Leicester was a miracle.
Yeah,
That
that's what
cannot
and
happen.
thanks for
It's
clarifying
simply a
that, Dave
miracle.
and
Yeah,
BS.
because Leicester they came up from Championship, and they were almost relegated the season they came into PL. They somehow barely escaped relegation, and the
Yeah,
next season they win the title. That is something that we cannot ever see again. Girona
yeah,
are not exactly like that. Girona has been there in the mid-table or upper mid-table echelons of La Liga for the past so many years. They have been getting inputs from City Group. They have had a proper academy structure built in. They have groomed their players to play at this level. And dare I say their growth and their push to the top of the La Liga has been way more organic, gradual, and consistent than what happened at Leicester. Leicester was a miracle, and like Dave correctly said, Hirona is a story happening, and this is not the climax. This is not the pinnacle of Hirona's story.
yeah.
This is probably
It's
the
here to
starting
stay, and we
phase.
are yet to see it peaking. Is what we are.
We are here
yeah,
to see it
yeah.
peaking.
Now that also depends on, say, which coach, like if Michel continues at Girona. there's a possibility that
Yes.
top clubs might come and try to poach Michel. There were
I
rumors
hear
about
that Newcastle
Bayern
United, because
going
of
for
the recent run of results, are already interested in getting Michel to
Michel.
the
There
British accountable.
there are rumors that if Tuchel does not do well at Bayern this season, they will go for Michel.
I
So
think
these
Bayern
sort of
would more
things
likely try to get Xabi Alonso early before Real Madrid is
probably.
able to grab him, in the sense that since Carlo Ancelotti has already extended his contract,
Yeah,
Karl-Heinz Rummenigge and co, they try to be over smart a lot of the time. Sometimes works, sometimes doesn't. But I think that's where Bayern's priority would lie. They would like to poach Alonso before Real gets him.
yeah,
But
yeah,
Newcastle might be a really tempting option for Michel, because Khandalf, again, Newcastle are probably, I mean, the ownership group of Newcastle are probably richer than Man City group themselves.
yeah.
It's owned by Saudi, so it's the Saud family owning Newcastle. They
See,
are not cash strapped. Like they have the wealth, and they are a decent squad. They're a good squad. Not decent is an
Just an
understatement.
interesting snippet on, that you mentioned, Newcastle, and thanks for that information about their ownership. The last time I saw a Newcastle match was when Alan Shearer, if I'm not wrong, used to
Oh my God.
play for Newcastle.
Again, something interesting, because Newcastle are
I'm
not
that
due
many
from
years
those.
old, by the way. So
Exactly, Khandal. That, I mean, it also fits into the context. Saudi did not invest in a nobody club and try to raise them. Newcastle has been historically a top English club. They still have one of the biggest stadiums in EPL. I think their stadium's better. St James Park is probably better than Stamford Bridge, even Chelsea
yeah,
Stadium.
yeah,
And they have history. EPL's all-time top scorer, Alan Shearer, he scored most of his goals playing for Newcastle. So again, a club on its ascendancy. And talking about Newcastle, they already watched a match versus Liverpool. Liverpool beat them
yes.
4-2, and the match, I watched it and I was scared. The way Liverpool attacked, the way Liverpool gave Newcastle no room to breathe, it was one of the most intense halves of football that I've ever seen. Despite the scorecard being somewhat favorable for Newcastle in terms of a 4-2, it was not a 4-2 match. Liverpool dominated Newcastle beginning
Liverpool
to
could have
end.
scored 8. Liverpool could
Maybe
have
even
scored
more,
8.
maybe even more. So they
Yeah,
have to, if they had a better finisher, Darwin Nunes not fluffing his lines constantly, I think it would have been a much bigger thrashing of a match. And also at the same
I
time,
think.
Liverpool are taking to the top of PL table with that results. But also they are losing Salah for a month, probably due to the AFCON, which will
Yeah, they're
inevitably affect
also
their chances,
losing.
because he is simply their best player. That doesn't need
Yeah,
much
I think
elaboration as
they're
such.
also they're also losing Wataru Endo, who has been
Yes,
surprisingly excellent for Liverpool since the turn of the season. And see, I think they finished that match with like 7.75 xG or something like that, which is the highest ever recorded since they started keeping the stats.
very probable,
That
very
just
probable.
shows, yeah, that just shows how good and how effective that team is, and it's scary because now it looks Luis Diaz had a difficult season or season
He
and a
did not
half
have a
with his
difficult
injuries.
week last time
No,
around.
he
Oh my
did
God.
not. He looked like the old Luis Diaz.
What
He
a
was
dynamo.
balling.
Yep.
He was balling.
And
Then
one
this
thing
guy
we
Jota
have
comes in. He
silently
starts
ignored,
balling. Soboslai starts balling. McAllister
yes.
comes in. He starts balling. It's
And
insane.
Salah has
Everyone is
been
balling in
balling
that team.
since he joined Liverpool. So it's good time for Liverpool fans. And one thing they were just don't want to ignore this. We know how good Van Dijk was in his 2018-19 and even the 20 years. And then there were criticisms thrown at him that he has dipped, he has lost his levels. This season has seen a quite somewhat silent uprising of the Van Dijk that we have known for a good long time, because he is anchoring the backline and he's doing it well. And at the same time, since we mentioned Liverpool, they have displaced Arsenal at the top, and Arsenal lost against Fulham. Things are not really bright for Arsenal, and Arsenal fans are usually pissed off because they have set their expectations way too high. I would say Arsenal are doing fine. I mean, they're doing really well. In fact, they lost a game against their derby rivals Fulham. It's basically okay. It is not far fetched to say that Arsenal are, it's very far fetched to say that Arsenal are dwindling or the card of palaces have come crumbling. Nothing of the sort has happened. They
No, no,
are
no.
where they are supposed to be at this stage in the game and still staying competitive.
Yeah, I actually agree with. I think it was Jamie Carragher with that assessment that they have good forwards, but they do not have elite forwards, and I actually sort of agree
He
with
used the
that
term
assessment of
world
Arsenal.
class precisely.
World class, yeah, world class forwards, which is something I agree with. Like, you do not look at that Arsenal squad and go, okay, oh, Jesus is going to score 20 goals this season. You
What
do
he
not
meant to
say
say
that.
was they don't have a Haaland, they don't have a
Yeah,
Mohamed
they do not
Salah, they
have a
don't have
Haaland,
a
they do not
Vinicius
have a
Junior.
Salah. Exactly. So
So of that kind.
So in that sense, they are where they are supposed to be.
But then
No
again,
one
it's
apart
a
from like
project that is.
last season they had a great run. I agree, but once Haaland started scoring, they were blown out of the water, as we saw at the end of
Yeah.
the season. This season, I know their fans might have been expecting that okay, we'll push for a title challenge again, but every other team in the top four reinforced themselves, so they were already starting a bit behind the curve, I would say, with their
But in
attackers.
what I
So
would say is good news for Arsenal fans is that although they do not have a world class attacker as of now, I see every chance that Bukayo Saka will get there. He is
yeah,
still very young. He hasn't even hit his. He's not even close to his prime. So there is
yeah.
potential for Arsenal fans to look forward to. But one thing that Arsenal fans are not looking forward to, which already happened, Kevin De Bruyne is back. He's sitting on the bench,
Oh my
and
god,
that
that
is
is a
that is
scary,
something
scary thing.
that is a very scary prospect, even for Liverpool fans, not just Arsenal fans. Just when they lose
But
Salah, City are bringing back De Bruyne.
Khandalf, you have something to say?
no, no, I was just wondering, Kevin De Bruyne. Yeah, he was injured and he's back.
He is back,
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
and him
He
being
he
back
does
makes
this
a
every
huge
season.
difference.
He does this every season. So he gets injured around September, October-ish, is out for 2 months, then comes back in January, and then Haaland scores 50 goals because it's Kevin De Bruyne providing him the assists. It's
Yeah,
insane,
and now
and
with
it's
John
going to
Stones
happen
also.
again.
Yeah, and with John Stones also trying recovering from his injuries, City clockwork will finally start running as usual, and it's
Yeah,
again a scary prospect.
because
So I think
City so
February,
far
March
are
onwards.
yeah,
Yeah, man,
because
Deva.
City so far were actually struggling to score goals. Haaland has been struggling to score goals. They
By his
haven't been as
standards.
effective. Yeah, by his standards, they haven't been as effective as they were. They even had a few draws and didn't they lose a match or something like that also happened. So overall, there weren't good vibes in City ground till Kevin De Bruyne started warming up, and I think no one put it as perfectly as Klopp did. Kevin De Bruyne starts warming up, and the entire England shakes in fear. That's how
Yes,
good
that
that
is
man
what he
is.
said, and he is not wrong when he said that. Also, soon, once De Bruyne, Stones, and those guys are back, the City team they are going to, they're going to run like gears after some extremely good oil has been used for lubrication, and that actually kind of brings us to the top news at PL, La Liga, and in football. So I think Khandalf has been sitting tight there because he has to answer a call very urgently. So we'll let him be. And
Let's
the call,
let, let,
incidentally, if the
did you
viewers
say
are
did you
wondering,
say
call
you
is
will let
coming from
me
nature.
be? Did you say you let me be, or should I say
And
let me be? Okay. All right. I'll keep it let me be. And then thanks
you
very
can.
much for your time. Thanks, Dave.
And thank you
What
so much,
a
everybody, for staying with us. Have a good
yeah,
year
what
ahead.
a wonderful
Thank you.
chat. Absolutely loved it. See you around next time on See You This Week. Like, share, and subscribe as always. Thank you.